Hi guys, in this video series we'll be looking at building a cross-platform MAUI app that can run on Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. This will be a two-part series. In this first video, I'll take you through the steps to create an Android Auto app with MAUI, and then next time we'll add the Apple CarPlay app to our MAUI app. So be sure to hit the subscribe button so that you don't miss that one. And of course, if you found this video useful, feel free to hit the like button so that it can help others as well. So here's a quick demo of what we'll be building today. As you can see, the Android Auto MAUI app is running on my car. For you to be able to run the app on your car, you'll have to publish it to the Google Play console to your internal track. Otherwise, it won't show up on your car. But you can still use the desktop head unit emulator to debug your app before you publish it to your internal track. So as you can see, the app has a pretty basic layout, and I'm using all the standard .NET MAUI assets that comes pre-installed with the sample app. I did this to keep the tutorial as simple and straightforward as possible. So I implemented a couple of different templates for the various screens. The first one is the message template. On this template, you can provide an image, some text, and some action buttons. I've hooked up the action buttons to display toast messages when you tap them. You can easily override this functionality with your own functionality that you require upon a button press. When I tap the back button, the navigation stack is popped and we're taken back to the main menu. Next, we have the Pane template. This basically provides a large image, some rows with text, and you can hook up additional action strip actions in the top right corner. I've also added an action button to the end of the Pane template that pops the stack as well. Lastly, we have a grid template. This allows you to display elements in a grid layout. I've hooked up their OnClickListeners to also display their relevant toast messages. I've added the same action strip to this page that was on the Pane template. The fourth template is the one the main menu is using, which is a list template that allows you to display elements in a list format. It's a pretty simple layout, but I believe it will provide you with the building blocks to understand how the Android Auto framework works and create any kind of UI that you might need. Before we get started with the implementation, there is a couple of things you should know when it comes to Android Auto. There are two types of car apps you can build with Android, namely Android Auto and Android Automotive OS. Android Auto runs on your phone as a background service and uses the car's infotainment display as an external display, whereas Android Automotive OS is when the car system runs Android itself and does not require a phone to run these Android car apps. Fortunately, the process to develop for both is essentially the same, but this tutorial will only focus on Android Auto. Another thing to consider when developing an Android Auto app is that Google limits you to using one of their predefined templates. This is to ensure the layout conforms to driver safety requirements and that the driver will not get distracted by your app. This does, however, limit you as a developer on how much you can customize the app's user interface. Lastly, be sure to check out Android app quality for cars and Google's design guidelines, which I will link in the description below. If you Google Android for cars and click on the first link, you will find all the documentation surrounding developing an Android Auto app. I'll also provide the link in the description below. This video's implementation is based on this documentation. You will notice there are different categories that you can target depending on your app's functionality, such as media apps, which is used to create radio, podcast, or music apps, messaging apps, point of interest apps, Internet of Things apps, navigation apps, and video streaming apps. We will be focusing on the point of interest and IoT categories in this video, which uses the car app library. But hopefully I'll provide you with enough tools that will provide guidance if you want to target any of the other categories. The documentation is for Kotlin and Java, but you will quickly see that it is not difficult to translate to C#. Alright, let's get started with setting up our environment. The first thing that you will need is Android Studio because there are some SDK packages we need to install with it. Once you've downloaded and installed Android Studio, start Android Studio and select More Actions. Then tap on SDK Manager. You need to have at least one of the SDK platforms installed so that you can develop for your Android phone. Head over to the SDK Tools tab and select the following packages: Android Auto API Simulators, Android Auto Desktop Head Unit Emulator, Google USB Driver, and Android SDK Platform Tools. Once you've successfully installed all of these packages, open up Command Prompt and type ADB and hit Enter. If you get an unrecognized command, it means that the ADB exe has not been added to your system path, so you need to add it to your system path. Next, install the latest Visual Studio if you don't have it installed already. During the installation process, be sure to select .NET MAUI Platform App UI Development. Start Visual Studio and select Create a new project. Search for .NET MAUI and select .NET MAUI App. Select Next. Provide a creative name. And set a location where you want your project to be created. On the next page, you can select the framework, either .NET 6 or .NET 7 at this stage. It doesn't matter, this tutorial should work for both. I'm going to select .NET 7 since it's the greatest and latest. Select Create, and your project should be created. Connect your phone to your PC, and let's just do a demo run to be sure that everything is working in the sample app. So on my drop down, I'm just going to Android local devices, selecting my device and selecting run. This is assuming that you've already enabled developer options on your phone and also set USB debugging to true on your phone settings. Say remember my choice and select install. If all went well, your new app should appear on your phone's home page. I'm using this screen copy tool, which is a free tool that broadcasts your phone screen to your computer. It saves a lot of time if you're developing on your phone, and it's available for both Windows and Mac. Alright, looks like our demo app is launching, and there we go. The basic sample app from MAUI looks like it is running well. Okay, we can finally get started at implementing Android Auto. Stop the debugging session. From the Android developer docs, the first thing we need to do is declare the core app service in our manifest. However, the way that MAUI does this is slightly different to vanilla Android. MAUI and Xamarin allows you to specify attributes on top of your service class that will inject these parameters into the manifest. Open the platforms folder in our solution. Open Android. And let's create a folder in here called Android Auto, which will contain all our Android Auto code. Within the Android Auto folder, create another folder called Services, which will hold our service class. So right click, select Add and select Class. Then give it a name. So let's just call this AA Core Service. Select Add. So we want this class to be public. And here is where we will add our attributes that will tell MAUI what to put into the manifest. So this is a service. Since Android 12, you have to specify exported. I'm going to set it to true. And then the service needs to have an intent filter, which is straight from that Android developer docs. So say new string array, and then we're gonna specify a string here, androidx.car.app.CarAppService. All right, categories. So here is where we'll be specifying one of those categories that we saw earlier. For this demo, I'm going to use the POI category. .app.category.POI. All right. So next we need to install the NuGet package for our car app library. So right click on your project and go to manage NuGet packages. Then go to the browse tab and search for androidx.car, and you'll see xamarin.androidx.car.app.app. But this also works for MAUI. It's currently version 1.2, so we don't yet have the version 1.3 available since that's still in release candidate version. So select install, and it will install it onto our MAUI project for the Android platform. Great. Head back to your service and now inherit from CarAppService. We will have to specify a using. So just select using AndroidX Car App. All right. Now it's complaining that we're not implementing the abstract members. So click on Show Potential Fixes. And then select Implement Abstract Class. It created two new methods for us, Create Host Validator and onCreate Session. In the Create Host Validator, we want to return a host validator, say .allow all hosts validator. And then in the onCreate session, we want to return a new session. But we first need to create that class. So let's create another folder in our Android Auto folder called Sessions. And in this folder, let's create a class called AA Session. Okay, let's make this a public class as well. And this needs to inherit from session. And if the autocomplete pops up, select the one that says androidx.car.app. Again, it's going to complain about not implementing the abstract members. So just say show potential fixes and select implement abstract class. All right, so we have an onCreate screen. So this is typically where you will decide which screen you want to display to the user. So typically you check your permissions. If the user haven't accepted all the permissions you require them to accept that you want to use in the app, say you want to use Bluetooth or some other, or location or some other permission, then this is perhaps where you would want to reroute them to a screen that says, you know, go to a safe location, park your car, and accept the permissions on your phone. But for this demo, we're just going to take the user to the main screen, which is going to be our menu screen. So we're going to return new, and this is where we're going to call our new screen. But first, again, we need to create this screen. So let's create another folder in our Android Auto folder called Screens. Let's create the first screen. So say add class, and then let's call this one AA screen menu. All right, again, it needs to be a public class. This time we want to inherit from screen, another class from the androidx.car app. There we go. Again, it's complaining about abstract members not being implemented, so show potential fixes and implement abstract class. You'll see there's another error that it gives us, and it says it does not contain a constructor that takes 0 arguments. So show potential fixes and select the one that says call context. There we go, all errors gone. So when this is called, your constructor will be called first, and this will give you your call context. Call context is quite a useful class. It provides us with many valuable methods. You can work through this. There's a lot of info you can get from this. All right. On the get template, we're gonna return a list template. So let's go and return new list template. So all the Android Auto screens use the boulder pattern. If you've worked with .NET, you should be familiar with the boulder pattern. If not, don't worry, it is quite straightforward. You'll quickly get the hang of it, and it's quite a neat pattern. So you say dot builder with empty brackets, say dot, and then it provides you with all the extensions you can attach on this folder. There's, for example, the set action strip, set header action, set single list, set title. So we're gonna first add a title to this page. So we're gonna say set title, and let's just call this Maui Android Auto, and this is the menu page. Once you added all your extensions, you can say .build, and then it will create that template for you. All right, but this isn't exactly a very interesting screen. It only has a title so far. So let's add some list items to it. So what we want to do is create a item list equals new item list dot builder. So again, using the builder pattern here, then we're going to provide a set no items message. So this is when there's no items in the list yet. So this is just going to be our hello world message. So let's just type something like our Maui app is running on Android Auto. All right, and then again, you want to say .build once you're happy with all the extensions you've added. So we want to then set this item list onto the list template. So we can go and say dot set single list and specify the item list. All right, so now we can finally specify this screen on the session. So we can go back to our session class, say new AA screen menu, and pass through car context. All right, and then now that our session is set up correctly, we can now specify it in our service. So let's just go here, AA session, and there we go, all errors gone. There's still one or two things that we just need to do before we can finally run our Hello World one-pager app. The first one is in the Android manifest, we are going to add one or two items manually. So in this application tag, just go to the end, and before the end application tag, just tap enter so that you get that on a new line. Then we want to specify some metadata in here. The moment you upload an app with this metadata in, the Google Play console knows, okay, this app contains an Android Auto part to it, so it needs to go through that review process. But I'll elaborate on the whole review process of Google when you upload your app to them at a later stage. So we want to say here metadata Android name, just going to paste it in here, Android resource, automotive app disk. So we're going to have to create this XML resource. Don't ask too many questions about it. It's basically just telling it needs to use the templates. I don't know why they set it up that way, but yeah. Another method tag we're going to add in here is just the min API level. So then that just also says Android name, androidx.car.app, min API level, Android value equals 1. So that even the oldest types of phone that supports Android Auto can run this. On that point, if we do try to build this now, it's first going to fail because of it won't be able to find that XML file, but also by default, MAUI's minimum SDK version is say 221, which I think is like Android 4 or 5, and at that stage Android Auto didn't exist yet, so we need to up that to 23, which is the minimum that Android Auto will allow. So if you double click on the project file, you can just search for the Android min SDK specification, which is over here, which is currently 21. So just change that to 23. Oh, numlock was off, sorry. Let's just change that to 23 and save the file. All right, then almost there, almost there. So we're going to add that XML file inside the resources folder inside the Android platforms folder. So add new folder, XML. All right, so in this XML folder, we want to create a XML file. And then here we just want to specify that name that we specified in the manifest, automotive underscore app underscore desk.xml. All right, should create our file. There we go. Underneath the XML tag, we want to create a tag called automotive app. And inside that tag, we want to create a tag that says users name equals template. This is the same if you were doing this in vanilla Android. You would also have to create this XML file. Don't ask me why. All right, so let's do a rebuild of the entire solution just to be sure that we didn't make any typos. Great, rebuild all succeeded. So let's deploy these changes to our phone again. Okay, it's launching and there we go. So no changes on the app since the last launch. So to run this now in the emulator, there's a couple of things we need to do. So let's stop the debugging session. On your phone, go to settings, and then in settings, search for Android Auto. Great. If you're in the Android Auto settings, it should look like this. There's a second set of secret developer options that we need to activate specifically for Android Auto. So if you scroll all the way down, you'll see there's a version down here. I'm going to tap that a bunch of times until we become a developer. And there we go. Allow developer settings. Okay. And then it says developer settings has been enabled. Okay. Great. So now we can go to these three dots at the top and we have some new settings available to us. You want to tap on the start head unit server and then open up command prompts on your computer. We want to send the following command, adb forward tcp 5277 tcp colon 5277. This is just forwarding the port so that we can use the desktop emulator. Now you need to find your desktop emulator, which I have open here. So it's quite a path to traverse. It's C users, your username, AppData, local Android, SDK, extras, Google auto, and then finally you'll see the exe here. So it might be easier just to right click and then pin to start, because I'm sure you don't want to go to that path every single time. So let's launch the desktop head unit server, and it should pop up like this and start running. So let's go to our apps, and then if you did everything correctly, you should see your brand new app on the app screen. So let's see if it launches. Go in there. There we go. Our Maui app is running on Android Auto. So it looks like all went well, but the app doesn't exactly do a lot at this point. So let's go and expand our templates and build some additional pages. All right, we've made some good progress, but it's still a small Hello World app. So let's expand a bit on the menu page. So let's go back to screen menu, and then let's first off add a header action. A header action is binded to the list template. So set header action. And if you look at the autocomplete options, there aren't a lot of options that you have here. You can either set the app icon that will then appear in the top left corner, or you can set a back button which will pop your navigation stack. If you try and apply a custom action here, the app will crash and you'll get a exception saying something like custom not allowed in all caps. So just something to take into consideration. So for this main menu, I'm just going to display the app icon, and you will see there's an ambiguous reference. So let's just add the correct using. So we want to use the one from the car app model. All right. Then we can add some list items to our list to give the options to navigate to the various other screens that we're going to make. So first off, we are going to have a message screen. So let's just say var message template screen equals new row. So these are all going to be rows in our list. Again, we're using the builder pattern. So I'm gonna dot set title, and this is gonna be message template. So this is what's gonna be displayed on there. You can also add text if you'd like. So let's just add some text here, sample text. All right. Then we can also set an image onto this row item. Now, if you look at the options here, we have to supply a car icon, or the overload, you can then also specify the image type. So how do we get an image that's in our shared resources? So we want to use this .NET Bot SVG in our CarPlay app. So fortunately, it is quite simple. All you need to do is import it with, so let's create one here, var.net bot icon. So this is going to be an icon compat, is what they call it. So we're going to say icon equals icon compat dot create with resource. And this we need to pass the car context, and then we can just say resource dot drawable dot, and then we have all our resources available here. So we're looking for .NET bot, and there we magically have our image. So any images of any format that you place in your shared resources, you can have access to here in your Android Auto project. So that's quite cool. But then we also just need to create a car icon from this. So again, I have to use the builder pattern for that. So let's just call this one .NET bot car icon. And this is going to be equals to new car icon dot builder .NET compat dot build. Great. Then we can just pass this car icon through to here, and there it is happening. All right, one last thing that we can add to this row item is a little chevron to indicate that this is a clickable item. So there's a .set browsable. So if we set that to true, then it will add a little chevron on our row. So we're going to duplicate what we've done here 2 more times for the other 2 screens that we're also going to have. So this one is going to be called the Pane template screen, and the last one is going to be the grid template screen. And obviously we also just want to change the titles: Pane template, grid templates. All right, let's just auto format. All right. So we then want to add our 3 items to our list. I'm just going to say dot. So we always have to do this before the dot build, so we can add extensions to the builder. And then once it's built, you can't add extensions anymore. So say add item, so message template screen, another one, add item, Pane template screen, and the last one, the grid template screen. All right, so that would build our list. However, if we tap on those list items, nothing will happen yet. So the way we will handle that is with an OnClickListener. So if we add a .set OnClickListener and you start the brackets, you'll see it is looking for, if we control click in here, it is looking for something that implements the OnClickListener interface. And there is no proper suggestions that it gives us. So we're going to implement our own class that implements the OnClickListener interface, and then this can use it. So back to your Solution Explorer, let's add another folder in here called OnClickListeners. Okay, and then in here add a class. We're going to call this one the navigation on click listener. So it needs to be made public, and we said we're going to implement the onClick listener interface. If you hover over it, it has a ton of methods that haven't been implemented, and you might think, oh, okay, we need to show all potential fixes and apply all these abstract members, but there is a much simpler approach. Fortunately, we can inherit from the java.lang.object base class, and then that implements most of them for us. Then we only have one, and that's the only one we're interested in, so we're going to say implement interface. So this onClick method will be called once the event is tapped. So how would we know to which screen to navigate? Well, we're going to specify that in the constructor. So you can create a constructor for this by just typing ctor and pressing tab twice. In our constructor, we're going to need a couple of parameters. The first is the car context, since we need to pass that to whatever screen we navigate to next. The next is the screen manager, which we will use to do the actual navigation. And lastly, we go on to pass an enum that's going to specify for us which screen the user wants to navigate to. So let's create one more folder in here called enums, and then let's just add class AA screen, add public, change the class into an enum. I like that it always specifies the first one as none for you. It's always good practice. So then let's make the menu first one, the message template be number 2, then the Pane template be number 3, grid template be number 4, and then let's just add a pop mechanism as well, in case we just want to return to the previous screen. Okay, so let's go back to our OnClickListener, and then let's add this AA screen enum. Okay, and we can just call this screen to navigate to. Okay, so obviously we're going to need some private references to all of these. Okay, so these can be made read-only, since we're just setting their value in the constructor. First one's going to be car context. Okay, then we can just copy paste this. We want a screen manager again, and then one for the enum. All right, then we just need to assign these in the constructor. So when we get an onClick event, we want to have a switch case here, and the switch is going to happen on the enum. Okay, so let's start with our none case. We just want to return. Obviously, something went wrong. Maybe you'll log an event there so that something can be done about it. Next is the menu. So when we want to navigate, we're going to use the screen manager dot push. So you'll see there's a bunch of methods here. So you can push, remove, pop, stack size. So one thing you need to keep into consideration, you only have a stack size of about 5 or 6. If you pass that, then you get an exception. So that's just something you need to take into consideration. The reason they implemented that is so that someone doesn't have to navigate through pages of content on their car and distract the driver. Okay, so we have to pass the car context to the screen that we're pushing, and there we go. That's the case for menu. Let's just add the other cases. Even though we haven't created those screens yet, we can then just come and fill them in later. A message template, then we have the Pane template, and then we have the grid template. And let's just add a case for the pop mechanism as well. To pop the context, you just use the screen manager again and say pop. Take you to the previous screen. And then we always have to implement our default case. All right. So this is our navigation on OnClickListener. We can now use this to navigate to the next screen. So we can then paste it in here, and we're gonna have to create a new instance of this, pass through the car context, the screen manager, and the screen we want to navigate to. So for this case, it's going to be the message template, so AA screen dot message template. Fantastic. Great, then we can just copy this to the other two rows and then just change the screen that they will navigate to. So this is going to be the Pane template screen, and lastly it's going to be the grid template screen. Okay, so we've done a lot of the groundwork for this. Now we can start creating our next screen so we can actually navigate to it. So next we're going to create the message screen. So new class, gonna call this AA screen message template. Change it to a public class, implement the screen base class, and then implement the abstract members. And also add the constructor with the car context. So in this case, we will want to return a new message template dot builder. Again, you guessed it. And then we can have a look here what we have at our disposal. So we can copy some things from the menu screen. So title is also relevant here. Our header action is going to change because here we want to actually show it the back button, so we can pop the stack with that. So let's just paste them in here and do a build. And it's complaining because this builder expects a message in the parameters here. So we can specify our message here for the message template. So this is a message template. There we go. And it's complaining that it doesn't know which action to use because there's more than one that implements it, and we want the car app action. But we want to change this to action.back so that it pops the stack. We don't need to use our navigation on OnClickListener for that. That already has the intelligence built in to just pop your stack. But we probably want to add an image again to this one, that it's not just text on the screen. So we can copy our .NET bot that we created from the previous one and just paste it in here. Then we can say .set icon and pass through this .NET bot icon. There we go. Then we can also add some actions to this message template, like what you saw in the demo with the accept and cancel commands. So typically you'd use the message template to prompt the user and ask them, do you want to proceed, or then they can accept or cancel. So I'm just going to create here action 1 equals new action dot builder, and then we can just set the icon to the same bot, set a title. The first one is going to be cancel, and we can actually set a background color here. The Android Auto don't allow you to set a background color on a lot of things, so use it where you can. All right, and then you have your dot build, and we can just copy paste this one to get a second action, our accept action. This could be more descriptive, maybe cancel action and accept action. All right, and then we can add these dot add action, cancel action, and the other one add action, accept action. I haven't tested what the limit is of how many you can have here, but it's probably just up to 2 or so. So obviously these actions don't currently do something, so you'll see we can also set an OnClickListener to these actions. So in this case, we want to show a toast that you can just then override to do whatever functionality you would like. So let's create another OnClickListener. So add class, and then let's call this one action OnClickListener. Okay, add public. So again, I OnClickListener, and we want to implement the base class of java.lang.object so that we don't have to implement all those methods. Just the onClick. There we go. Add our constructor. So we're going to need the car context here again to show a toast message. So go ahead and add that to your constructor. Go. And then secondly, we want to pass through a string for a message that we're going to display. And just implement private read-only members for this so that we can pass it to the onClick method. There we go. Assign them here. In the onClick method, we just want to say carToast.makeText. And then we want to pass through the car context and the message, and you need to pass through a duration. If you say carToast dot, you have length long and length short, or use the length long, and there we go. So if this OnClickListener is called and a message is passed to it, then it will show a toast message. So we can go back to our message template. In our OnClickListener, we can then say new action OnClickListener, pass through the car context and our message. We'll just say cancel was tapped. And here we can just say accept was tapped. Okay. So typically, if you want to hook up other functionality to one of these set OnClick listeners, then you would, in your OnClick listener, you would probably publish an event from here and then subscribe to that event wherever you need it, and then just handle it from there. Apologies, I realized we missed one last thing. You have to say .show on your cartoast.makeText, otherwise it won't show. All right, so let's run this and see how it goes. There we go, it's launching. You'll notice the app crashes always when it's deploying. It's fine. There we go. So we can go to our message template. Everything looks as expected with our image, our text, and our 2 action buttons. If we tap on cancel, it says cancel was tapped. And if we tap on accept, we get a toast that says accept was tapped. All right, that's the message template. Now we just need to implement the pane and the grid templates. Okay, so stop the debugging session and let's create screens for both of those. So new class. First, we're going to add a screen pane template, a screen grid template. add. All right, so on the pane, I change it again to public, inherit from screen again, and implement the abstract. Add the constructor and also implement the abstract class. All right, so here we want to return new pane template. Sure, you can see a pattern by now. .builder, and again we can carry some of our, let's rather carry it over from the message template. So copy over the title and header action. I accidentally copied the icon here as well. We can copy over the bot image as well, since we're going to use it in a couple of places on this page. So let's just resolve the action again. I realized the error of my ways and just removed the car icon again here. So let's say .build here. So we're getting an error over here because it's expecting a pane in its constructor's parameters. So let's create that. So we're going to say var pane. Let's first create a builder for this. We're not immediately going to build it since we want to populate it in a for loop. Pane.builder. Let's just remove those brackets that it created. And then we can say set image .NET bot. And yeah, we don't want to build this yet. Okay, so we're going to create a for loop here. And let's start off from 1, so we can just use the I directly. Let's add 10 items in here and increment I. So we're going to populate this pane with a bunch of items. Let's add them here. So there are also rows that we're going to use. So it's the same we've seen with the list template. So row.builder, set title, let's just say add the $sign before the quote marks so that we can add parameters in here. So add our curly braces, put in I, and then we say title. Then we'll say which row it is, and then we can set an image for this as well. Same image, and then we can also add text. Also say something similar, so also use our $sign and just say row, curly braces, I, text, and then we can build these ones. And then once each one of them are built, we can add them all to our pane builder. Add row and add that row. And then finally, we can say var pane equals pane builder dot build. So this is also what makes this builder pattern so powerful. You can start your builder, attach a lot of things, and then eventually just say build, and then you have a dynamically created object. So we then can pass this pane through to the constructor of the pane template, and then that sorts out the errors. We can also add an action to our pane. So let's add an action over here. Pane action equals new action dot builder. All right, and then we can just also set an icon here, same one. We can set background color. Let's make it blue this time. We can set a title. To change things up a bit, I'm going to use this action to go back. We're going to use our navigation OnClickListener here. We're going to set OnClickListener, new navigation OnClickListener. Going to pass through the car context again, pass through the screen manager, and an enum to where we want to go. But in this case, we just want to pop the stack, so let's rather use. Otherwise, if we push the menu again on top of it, we're wasting some of our stack depth. So I'm just going to pop the stack and then say build. And we can just attach this pane action to the pane builder. So we can say .add action. Great. So now we've also added an action to the pane. And then finally, we can also add an action strip. So the action strip is a maximum of 2 additional little buttons that you can add to your top right corner, just in case there's not enough to tap on your current page. So let's just add them here. Var action 1. Okay, then we can just set our icon again, set our OnClickListener. It's going to use the action OnClickListener, then it displays another toast for us. Add card context and a message. Action strip item 1 was tapped, and then we can build this. .build. There we go. So you'll notice the action has a set background color, but if you change the background color of any of the action strip actions, then you get an exception telling you you're not allowed to change the background color of your action strip actions. So just something to take into consideration as well if you don't want your app to crash. So here's action 2, and we're just going to display action 2 was tapped. First, just need to also build our action strip. Var action strip equals new action strip dot builder, and then add our two actions, action 1, action 2, and then let's build this one. Then we can add this action strip to our Pane template. There we go. So our Pane template is finished. Let's implement the grid template before we run again, so we save some time. Okay, same story, change this to public, inherit from screen, implement the constructor and the abstract base methods. Here we go. So in this constructor, you can also resolve any services that you might need here, which would allow you to use the services from your shared code in your Android Auto project. All right, so for the grid template, we want to return new grid template dot builder dot. So let's just also copy the action title and header action from our message template. So we don't have to type that over again. So this is then just going to say grid template. Oh, I might not have updated the titles here. Yes, this should be message template. And the Pane template should say Pane template. There we go. All right. So again, it doesn't know what action is. So let's just let it add the correct using for us. Car app. Okay, so the grid template also has a set single list. So that should look familiar by now. And it also has a set action strip. So we can copy that from our Pane template. So we're going to need the image again. So let's just copy it from here. So let's create our item list builder. Var grid item list builder equals new item list dot builder dot. We can add a set no items message, always safer, in case you're pulling in the grid items dynamically from your shared code. Otherwise, you might get an exception if you have an empty list. I'm just going to call this no grid items found. All right. We don't want to build this one yet. We're going to populate it again in a for loop. So let's just say for int I. Let's start from 1 again. While I is smaller than 10 or equal, increment I. So let's add some grid items in here. So we have a grid item, new grid item dot builder, and then we can set a title for them. It just takes a string, so let's add the $sign and then say grid item I title. Okay, and then we can set a text. Just gonna copy this text, and then we can also set an image. Image, same .NET bot icon. I'm sure you're tired of that one by now, but you can replace it with any asset that you added to your project. Set OnClickListener for this one. Again, just a new action OnClickListener. Pass through the car context again. $sign. What do we want to display? Grid item I was tapped. Okay, and then we can just say .build and add them to our grid item list builder. Grid item list builder dot add item grid item. There we go. And then we can build our grid item list builder. Var grid item list equals grid item list builder dot build. Then we can add it to the set single list, pass through our grid list, and we can say build. So the one thing I just want to add here is the set action strip. It comes in more handy than you might think. So I'm just going to copy that from our Pane template, our two actions with the action strip, paste it in here, and pass through that as the parameter. You can always wrap these in try-catches just to be safe. All right, now we just want to go to our navigation OnClickListener and set the navigation for our Pane template and grid template screens. All right, let's build and run our app and see what our changes look like. Okay, the app is launched. Let's have a look and see what our Pane template looks like. So you'll notice here we only have 4 items in the Pane template, even though we specified 9, so they do limit you to 4 items here. And then we have our action strip items, and they're showing the correct toast. And then if we tap here, it pops the stack. We go back to the menu, go to our grid template, and we have our 10 items here. So here you can have 10 at least. And they're also hooked up correctly, and the action strips as well. So that's it. Good job, guys. You've built a MAUI app using 4 different templates, and I think that should give you all the building blocks you might need to implement any of the other templates. So next time we're going to look at taking this a step further and making this a truly cross-platform app and implementing an Apple CarPlay app with the same functionality. So remember to hit the like and subscribe buttons, or you might miss that one. Feel free to let me know if anything was unclear in this video in the comments below, and see you next time.